Welcome to another episode of Mysteries Unknown. I got a really good podcast for you guys tonight. I've got Joe with me, and Joe has a property in southern Missouri, and he had 3 separate, very scary encounters with Bigfoot back in 2013. One of these encounters, this creature walked up behind them while they were camping in their tent, stood up over the back of their tent, and they could hear this creature breathing. Really long night. He's going to get into that in just a second. But before I do, like always, I just want to say thank you for being here, for being part of this podcast. If you have an encounter you want to send me, you can send it to me by email at video@jscreativear.com. Let's jump right into the story. Joe, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Man, I'm excited to hear your encounter. So take us back to southern Missouri in 2013 and just walk us through it.
So I was a long haul truck driver at the time. I had a weekend off and it was bow season, so I wanted to go get something from my freezer. I threw my bow in my pickup and I took off by myself, and we lease approximately 700 acres, and there's like 5 of us, and we're all truck drivers, so we're not always together at the same time. So I decided to go by myself. I didn't take a tent or anything at this particular time. So I get there around 3 or 4 in the afternoon, go check on my stands and things like that. I noticed there was, down one of the fire breaks that border our property, there was 3 giant rocks. Well, I wouldn't say giant, probably the size of bowling balls. And they were stacked and balanced on each other right on the side of the trail border in our property. I had never seen anything like that before. I thought maybe somebody was trying to sneak into our property and hunt, and that was their trail marker. But if you know anything about the woods at all, you know you're on a big fire break that's right in front of our gate, so you can't miss it. Where the rocks were placed, there was a very large old oak tree that was fallen over, so if you were out there in the dark, you didn't have to look for rocks. All you had to look for was the tree that was falling over. And so that you would know where to turn and where you were. I just kind of thought that was odd. I put out a little bit of corn and went back to camp, made a sandwich, built a small fire, listened to the radio, texted with my wife a couple of times. Around 9:15, I decided I'm going to put my fire out, and I'm just going to sleep in the back seat of my pickup. And I must say, we have 2 natural gas pipelines that tee into our property. So as soon as I put the fire out, it sounded me about 150 yards off where those pipelines tee together. It was like a cross between a woman and a bear screaming. And it was so loud, every hair on my body stood up. I climbed in my truck and I left for the night. I drove to the nearest town and got a hotel room. And I did not come back until daybreak the following day. I hunted unsuccessfully for a few hours, and then I left. I think it was 2 weekends after that, I was back home again, and me and a friend decided we were going to go out hunting. This time, they had a special season. It was doe only, but it was before Modern Arms opened for the year. And this time we took a tent with us. And we go up there one afternoon, same scenario. We get up there late in the afternoon. We get a fire going, get some dinner. We had a couple of beers, and then we went to bed. Late evening, probably around the same time, around 9:30ish, 10 o'clock. My friend wakes me up, and I'm like, what is it? He was like, just listen. And you couldn't hear anything walking or approaching the tent. You could just hear the breathing. and it probably got 10 yards up behind our tent, but it was like over the top of our tent. I mean, where if somebody's talking from your left or your right or something like that, you can pretty much project the sound. This thing was taller than our 6-foot tall tent. And like I said, it never broke any limbs. It didn't. We heard nothing except the breathing getting louder and louder. And it stopped right behind us. And it was probably there for a good 15, 20 minutes, just standing there breathing. It rattled my chest every time it breathed out. All of our weapons were in the pickup about 30 yards away. In hindsight, that's probably a bad idea. But I remember I had my pocket knife on me, so I pulled my pocket knife out, opened it up, and I just laid it on my chest. And I thought, well, if this thing wants to get me, it's going to get me. After about 15 or 20 minutes, I mean, it never touched the tent, never threw anything. It just stood there. And finally, it just kind of faded away. So we fell asleep, and around 3 a.m., I had to get up to use the bathroom. I got out of my bag, and I crawled over to the zipper on the tent, and I was just about to unzip it, and something inside me said, "Stop. Wait." And I started listening, and I could hear this breathing again, but it was not behind us. It was across this old logging road, maybe 30, 40 yards away. I could barely hear it, but I knew I was not getting out of that tent until daylight. So the next time we woke up was around 7:30 in the morning. Sun was up. We unzipped the tent, looked around, ran to the trucks, loaded our rifles, and but that was the last time I've been there. I haven't been back since. That was 10 years ago, so about 10 and a half.
Well, Joe, first of all, I don't blame you for not going back. I wouldn't go back. That's a really scary thing. There's something about the unknown, when something's sitting outside your tent and you're kind of unprotected and you're just kind of out there. And you said it right. If it wanted you, it could have got you. There's nothing you could have done. Even if you had the weapons with you, it wouldn't have done any good, with something like that.
There's nothing protecting you but a piece of fabric.
Yeah, there's not much there. There's not much between you and it. I know a lot of people describe these things when they breathe or they scream or they feel their chest coming in and out. And I know that really had to be nerve-wracking. How did that encounter, and I got some more questions, but I just want to know, first of all, how did that encounter affect you? How did that affect the rest of your life?
I don't like going out in the woods at dark anymore. I want to be able to see what's around me, my surroundings. I used to be on my stand, 30 minutes before daylight, waiting for the sun to come up, excited, ready to go. Yeah, I don't do that anymore. I want to be able to see what's around me.
I don't blame you. I talk to a lot of guys that, they love to hunt. They love the woods. I personally love the woods. But, unfortunately, when you have an encounter like that, it kind of takes that from you because, man, once you know this thing is out there, it changes everything,
I've heard a lot of people talk about it, oh, if you ever see one, would you shoot it? And I'm like, only to save my own life. I think I know that they're out there, but I think there's so few of them and they're concentrated in certain areas that if you was to do that, you could potentially hurt the population. And then until they start coming into town and, dragging people off and stuff, I don't see a reason to hurt them whatsoever. They're just like, to me, they're any other type of predator that's in the woods. Wolves, bears.
That makes sense. They're definitely the alpha predator, for sure. And you are very fortunate to make it, to be here to be able to tell that, encounter. Why do you think it didn't attack you guys? What do you think kept it from attacking you?
I think possibly it was more curious than anything. I've had some people I've told the encounter to, and they go, dude, I think it was stalking you. I go, no, it had us cornered. It wasn't really stalking us. I think it just maybe seen the fire before we put it out. And once we crawled in the tent, I think maybe it just was really curious, wanting to find out what was going on while we were there. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've heard all sorts of behaviors from them, but that's just, I mean, that's just what happened to me. So I don't know if that helps anybody. I hope it does. But
they're definitely, in my opinion, very curious, and I don't understand why they do a lot of things that they do. I do know, I feel like, anyways, in my opinion, that if you see one, there's another one close by somewhere. So there probably was another one there too. You couldn't hear it, or maybe the second time you heard the breathing, maybe that was a different one. I don't know, but I generally think they are in packs, more than one. Type of a thing. And if you had the opportunity again to see or have an encounter, would you want to?
I would love to see one from a distance, not at arm's length or anything like that. And I've thought about it a lot over the years, and I think some of the things are. I've tried to explain this to people as far as hunters go. Imagine if you were sitting at home watching TV, somebody walked in your house, opened your refrigerator, and just started taking your food out of there. I think that sometimes these things see us that way when we're out hunting and in the field. And sometimes they're probably like, why's that crazy guy doing that? He just caught a fish, he had food, and now he's throwing it back in the water. They're probably just as curious about us as we are about them. But I really don't want to make one mad.
No, that's a battle you're not going to win. These things are, I don't think people understand how massive these things are. And once you have an encounter with one and you kind of can realize how big they are, it does change your perspective on that. And they are very territorial. I had a guy on our show that when he was a kid, he started building these forts out there, right? And he would go back and these forts would be tore down, and he kind of got tired of it. He said one day he started peeing on the trees that were there, right? And he had this Bigfoot creature started to stalk him and basically chased him home. And he had a really long night. This thing stayed outside of his house. Same thing, you could hear it breathing right outside of where he was sleeping. Really scary encounter. And I think you brought up some good points. We're on their turf, their territory, and so they're probably just curious as to what we're doing and maybe watching us to make sure we're not going to do something, stupid to the other, the other Bigfoots in their area, or they're young, or however any of that works. But so I always like to ask people, and there's no right or wrong answer, and I know other podcasts ask about this. West with Sasquatch Chronicles always asks this question, but I'm always just curious to see what people think, man. What do you think Bigfoot is?
I believe, I live not too far from Dr. Jeff Meldrum right now at Idaho State University. He's an anthropologist, and I'm kind of on his side as far as a throwback of maybe an ancient remnant like Gigantopithecus, a giant ape. And until a few years ago, we thought the coelacanth, which is a type of fish, had been extinct for millions of years until they started catching them again. So I believe it's maybe an early ape ancestor, and the population might have thinned way down, but they never really went extinct or died out. They're possibly making a comeback at this point.
That's a good answer, man, and that would make a lot of sense. They are definitely, the sightings are becoming more and more often, right? People are running into these things more often, and the world's getting smaller. There's less and less force and things like that. So I can see how that can make sense. I look at everything through a biblical perspective, and so I have my own thoughts on what they are. But the thing of it is, Joe's, there's no expert. There's no way there can be at this point, right? Like, we're all taking educated guesses, but it's an interesting topic, and I love talking about it, and I really appreciate you coming on the show. And If you see something in the future, man, let me know. And thanks for coming on. Guys, I appreciate you being here. Thanks for being part of this journey. Without you guys, this podcast would not be possible. I really do appreciate each and every one of you guys. And like always, if you have a mystery or something you want to send me, you can email me at video@jscreativear.com. And like always, stay prayed up. We'll talk to you guys in the next episode.